For sleeping compared with earlier in the week, but also in some rural spots, temperatures dipping to 5 to 7 Celsius. A bright start for many as we begin at the weekend. Some showers in the east first thing, they push away. The sun starts to appear by the afternoon. And in the south and the east, it is warming up, but towards the northwest, clouds thicken. The breeze picks up. It will be a gusty day and spells of rain arrive. 19, 21 in Glasgow and Belfast, but more like 23 to 28 Celsius in the south and southeast. Into Saturday evening, further spells of rain make an appearance into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, and some outbreaks of rain also affect Wales and western England as well. Mostly dry, though, towards the east. And on Sunday, there'll be further showers, particularly towards the north and the west. Similar on Monday, and it's turning cooler again.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About on GB News with me, Alex Phillips, where we get stuck into the big issues of the day and we look at them in depth. Nothing is off the table and no one will be cancelled for saying what they think. Now, keeping me company today is the fabulous Dawn Neeson, ex-editor of The Daily Star, and here's what we're going to be talking about on today's show. Showbiz for ugly people. So goes the old adage about politics. Well, as Truss and Sunak battle it out in a pretty ghastly beauty contest to become our new Prime Minister, do either of them pass muster when it comes to making a convincing world leader? Ooh, we've got a body language expert on to tear them both apart. And is Trump to blame for fueling the Capitol Hill riots and then turning a blind eye as the mob descended on DC? Or is the Congress inquiry just a kangaroo court that will do nothing to stop the Donald making a blazing comeback in 2024? And the EU's taking us to court over Northern Ireland. But is it all just predictable posturing over the protocol? All that and some right royal gossip you don't want to miss. So lots coming up over the next hour. You're only sanctioned to get up to make a brew during the Addies, or grab your laptop and email us at gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. First, though, it's time for GB News headlines with Rhiannon.
Alex, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 2, your top stories from the GB newsroom. The EU has launched fresh legal action against the UK over claims it's failing to comply with the Northern Ireland Protocol. The UK is accused of being unwilling to engage in meaningful discussion to find a joint solution to the problem. The EU says it's challenging the British government, claiming it ignored repeated calls to reconsider its position on the trading arrangements. MP Andrew Mitchell says he's dismayed the EU are taking legal action.
I do think that the EU have been really quite unhelpful over the issue of Northern Ireland and the protocol, and that the programme that the British government put forward of red and green routes through customs issues was the right approach. And I'm very dismayed indeed that it has now come to a legal case.
A critical incident has been declared by the Port of Dover and it's urging holidaymakers to consider staying away. Police are controlling traffic with queues of up to 6 hours expected. The port's chief executive says staff are focusing on tackling the bottleneck but can't promise the chaos will be gone by tomorrow. It comes as a crash on the M20 has closed access to the Eurotunnel. Meanwhile, go-slow fuel price protests are causing yet more traffic jams across the UK. Police say moving roadblocks are making the busy school holiday getaway even worse. Well, amid the travel chaos, a bit of welcome news for holidaymakers. British Airways workers, mostly check-in staff at Heathrow Airport, have voted to call off strike action. Members of Unite and the GMB union had voted for industrial action in a row over a pay cut during the pandemic. But after extensive negotiations, the company made a new offer, which members were balloted on and have now accepted. Prince Harry has won his bid to take the Home Office to court over his UK security arrangements. Lawyers for the Duke of Sussex are challenging a decision not to allow him to pay for police protection for his family while they're in the UK. The judgment means there'll be a full High Court hearing to review the Duke's claim. A former Irish soldier has been sentenced to 15 months in jail for being a member of the so-called Islamic State. Ex-Defence Forces member Lisa Smith was convicted of being part of the terrorist group by Dublin's non-jury Special Criminal Court. The 40-year-old Islam convert was acquitted of a separate charge of financing terror. Witnesses claim Donald Trump watched last year's Capitol riots unfold on TV at the White House, ignoring pleas from his children and close advisors to intervene. The House of Representatives Select Committee has heard details of Mr. Trump's activities on January the 6th last year as a mob of his supporters raided Congress. He denies wrongdoing and says the inquiry has heard many lies. While former White House Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Matthews says the former US president's words encouraged the rioters.
As a spokesperson for him, I knew that I would be asked to defend that. And to me, his refusal to act and call off the mob that day and his refusal to condemn the violence was indefensible.
Ukraine's Deputy Defence Minister has met his troops training in the UK as part of British support for his country in its war against Russia. Volodymyr Gavrilov also met with UK Armed Forces Minister James Heappey to discuss further support to meet the needs of his armed forces. They spoke with trainees and Royal Navy instructors and watched them practising key skills at sea, such as weapon drills and damage control. The two remaining Tory leadership hopefuls are trading blows over each other's tax plans. Rishi Sunak's warning against what he calls a huge borrowing spree. It's in response to Liz Truss's plans to cut taxes by at least £30 billion a year. She says her proposals are affordable and that the former Chancellor's tax rises will choke off growth. Professor of Economics at Cardiff University, Patrick Minford, who was a former advisor to Margaret Thatcher, agrees with Ms Truss.
When the Treasury spent £500 billion on COVID, because obviously it had to, it then turned around and said, but you can't spend any more, in the coming years than that will put up borrowing, because we can't do that sort of thing. And of course, transparently, that is nonsense, having spent $500 billion on COVID.
This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now that it's back to Alex with We Need to Talk About.
So, as the duel to become the next Prime Minister enters the summer period and the so-called grid is rolled out, where the contenders have to glad hand and grin their way through various hustings and meet and greets, this kid pretty much summed up the mood of the nation.
This is so awkward.
Yeah, so awkward. Wow.
So true, Harry. Would you...
Well, who can forget the rapid fall from grace of Theresa May on entering that snap election campaign with the highest public approval ratings in decades, which suddenly then saw her lose her majority to a man who dresses like a Hungarian birdwatcher and was more at home tending to his allotments than hosting foreign dignitaries. The big mistake was running a presidential-style campaign with a woman who, before she was fussed in front of the camera to jerkily repeat strong and stable like a malfunctioning bot, had been tantalisingly beige and a canvas upon which the dreams of a nation could be painted. Well, in the wake of Boris Johnson, it's hard not to feel uncomfortable watching his two potential successors showcase their personalities in an often cringed-worthy and forced manner. While Rishi bursts into life like a Butlins redcoat, all hand gestures and hammy emphasis, Liz Truss sounds like a woman who still breaks into a sweat at the sound of her own voice on an answer machine, while you half expect a sudden donkey-like bray of frustration at any moment. What does it even matter? Surely, when our next Prime Minister steps into a room of world leaders, we want them to own it. Oh, what fun to dissect all of that. I'm delighted to be joined by body language expert Judy James. Judy, let's look at them both. So let's start with Rishi. What's his body language saying to you? What sort of tics and traits have you picked up?
And the thing with Rishi, I mean, Liz survives camera attention, but Rishi absolutely thrives on it. As you said, you can see him come to life when he makes his videos. He's throwing his hands as though he's throwing an invisible present at us. It's all very staccato. I always compare him a little bit to the kind of television programs where they're selling you things all the time. It's kind of washing powder. It's 100% selling going on, absolutely thriving on it. It's not bad body language, but we've seen it before because it is Tony Blair's body language. He uses all of the same techniques. We've got the staccato movement, we've got the wonderful smile, we've got the wide eyes, we've got very much the kind of like me gesticulation coming out. He even does the Tony Blair thumb of power all the time. We get the thumb over the fist going on, which is supposed to look like, you know, positive, confident body language. He even, Alex, brought out Tony Blair's favourite prop the other day. I saw him with a mug in one of his films, and that always used to be Blair's. Blair would often appear with a mug in the hand to look like a man of the people that doesn't drink off porcelain. The other thing that Rishi started to do, which is very much a Blair trait, the more they want to appear to be a man or a woman of the people, they start to adopt the Mockney accent. We can hear H's clanging as they get dropped as he speaks. So that's happened a lot. His tell, and the thing that we need to look out for on Monday, I think it is, isn't it, with the latest debate, he has very large eyes, and that can be a huge disadvantage for a politician because they are a window to the soul. And I think with Rishi, however much the smiling and the gesticulations going on, we can see, and I saw it in the other debates, anger, dislike at being questioned, a bit of fear. They kind of wilted at the end as well, so the bounce disappears. So that, if he was playing poker, the eyes would be the tell.
I mean, talking there about Rishi sort of mimicking Tony Blair's gesticulations, do you think that it's all hammy and choreographed? Is it authentic, or do you think he's been taught to do it?
That's such an interesting question, because when you get it coming down a generation, I mean, I know that Tony Blair's was very choreographed. I mean, even the thumb of power he was told to use, because he used to point in the House of Commons and you're not supposed to do that. So they said, bring your finger in and then put your thumb over the top so that it looks strong. And all of that was very heavily choreographed. But I don't know with Rishi, has he just been watching a lot of Tony Blair videos and just picked it up naturally? Are they traits that maybe he's inherited from his parents? It didn't look like it at the video that I saw. I've got a feeling that this is probably something deliberate. And they do it, and you know there's so much in politics where they take somebody that's been, in a way, successful, and they think, well, if that works for them, it should work for me as well. So it is this kind of Tony Blair tribute. I think it's deliberate, but I couldn't put money on that.
Yeah, and I think if it is deliberate, I don't think it'll sell well on the doorstep. Now, let's turn our attention to poor old Liz. She often looks like she gets lost leaving her own campaign rooms and sort of always looks a little bit like she doesn't want to be somewhere, a little bit awkward.
Yeah, and that kid picked up on it. I mean, when he said this is awkward, you just looked at her pose, didn't you? I mean, she was trying to look relaxed, and she got like one hand on the table, one on her hip. She tries to be, and again, I think this is the weakness. She's trying to be somebody she's not. She's trying to sell herself as the Iron Lady. And to me, she's more like peanut brittle or something like that. She looks very brittle. She has a very staccato blink rate when she's questioned in the debates, or we've seen it a lot, different interviews that she's doing. If she doesn't know the answer or she gets a killer question, she tends to just break down altogether, and we get this kind of moment where she just looks at the person that's asking her the questions. She's got to fill those moments. Again, that would be very much her tell, those blank stares and the pauses. She doesn't look well under scrutiny, and unfortunately she's got all of those videos of those conference talks that she gave in the past, and they're not really doing her any favours, because again, she tried to be something that she wasn't. She tried to use humour. You could almost see from her eyes when she was reading her script, I'm sure that up there was written, pause for the laughs, and it didn't happen, so she just stopped anyway. So she needs to, don't try and be that person. There's nothing worse than somebody trying to be funny when they're not, and we're getting those tumbleweed moments. So she can, I mean, she's a bit of what's called a teabag politician, which is good, which is that they can get stronger when they're put in hot water. And I think in the last debate, she perked up a bit when she was able to take on Rishi. But otherwise, she tends to look, as I say, much more brittle, and certainly shouldn't be comparing herself to the Iron Lady. I mean, wear the clothes if you want to, but you haven't got the body language.
Judy, fascinating insights. Loved having you on today to discuss all that. Judy James, body language expert. Wow, joining me now is Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Kent, good friend of the show, Matthew Goodwin. Matthew, you heard what Judy had to say there. Do you think that as this plays out over the course of summer, that we're going to see potentially Liz coming unstuck or Rishi coming unstuck if they can't maintain an air of authority and authenticity?
Well, firstly, it's good to be with you again, Alex. I think the pressure is definitely on Rishi Sunak to close that monumental gap in the polls that we saw yesterday. He's trailing Liz Truss now by about 24 points. So he's really going to have to, pull something out of the bag to close it. And on the other hand, of course, Liz Truss is really going to be doing anything she can to avoid any gaffes, any Theresa May style, mistakes on the campaign trail, trying to really convince and convey to those Conservative members who are very on side with her at the moment, that actually she can be trusted to be competent and to be capable in office.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Theresa May. I mentioned her in my intro because that was a pretty rapid fall from grace, wasn't it, for Theresa May during that election campaign when everyone had heard her speeches, the cut of her jib, liked what she had to say. But when all eyes were on her and she was the focus of attention, it all started to fall apart for her, didn't it? Is there a risk that that could happen to Liz Truss?
Well, it's an interesting one. I've spent this week talking to MPs and advisors in and around Westminster, and you hear two different things. The pessimists will say Liz Truss is a reboot of Theresa May. She's Theresa May 2.0. This is all going to be a disaster if she wins the leadership. But then there are actually others who offer a more nuanced take, and I think I'm probably in this camp. And they say, look, actually, Liz Truss and her team are aware of the mistakes that Theresa May made, and what they're going to do instead is promote what you might call a cabinet of all the talents. She's going to really propel other ministers forward and do what Theresa May never really managed to do, which is present a united front, a cabinet with Kemi Badenoch in it, a cabinet with Suella Braverman in it, a cabinet with maybe Nadine Zahawi or Michael Gove, to try and bring all of those big conservative heavyweights into the fold and say to the country, actually, this is a very different Conservative Party from what you've had previously.
It's interesting because Dominic Cummings has sort of, been dropping his Dom bombs and making mischief on Twitter by suggesting Liz, who he calls a human hand grenade, is potentially being quietly backed by Boris supporters because they think she might self-detonate and pave the way for his return. Do you think she has got that presence, that authority to stand up on the world stage, go to G7s and have everyone convinced that Britain is a big world power?
Well, look, I mean, I think we can all see what we see. I think Liz Truss is somebody who has government experience, cabinet experience, has done many of those international set pieces before. She's not the world's most charismatic politician. She's probably not the world's greatest communicator. But what has encouraged Conservative MPs and politicians, some politicians over the last week, is really watching Liz Truss unload her political guns on Rishi Sunak in that final debate that we saw. And there are people who've been saying to me this week, Alex, that, look, if Liz Truss can turn and hold the ground against Rishi Sunak, pushing back against his attacks that she wasn't a genuine Brexiteer, then she can turn her guns on Keir Starmer and the Labour Party and give them a good go before the next general election. That's what you will hear among some Conservative MPs in Westminster.
Matthew Goodwin, fantastic having you back on the programme for your always amazing insights. Well, also joining me on the show as my presenter friend, creaking on that high stool in the corner there, is Dawn Neeson, former editor of the Daily Star. Every time in the middle of saying something, I can see you sort of...
It's not me, it's not my bones, although it could be at this time of the week. It is actually the chair, by the way. So if you hear a creaking, it's definitely the chair, honestly.
When I'm talking about creaking, do you think these are particularly solid candidates we've got to be the next Prime Minister?
Oh, gosh, does anyone? I really wanted this to work just for the sake of this country, and having strong leadership and a strong opposition would be nice as well. But I just am not filled with hope. Doesn't spring eternal on this one, does it? And I agree a lot with what Matthew was saying there as well. I mean, to be fair to Liz, she has done quite well on the international stage already. She might not have the personality of Boris, but then what do we want? Do we want personality or do we want policies? We went for the policy, the personality, and look where that got us. Not in a great situation with Boris. Great personality, great charisma, but we are now where we are. I just wish Liz, talking about what Judy was saying as well, I wish she would find her own, be Liz.
Her own rhythm.
Don't try and be Margaret Thatcher Mark II. I mean, even...
creepy, isn't it?
It is. Even dressing the same. The pussy bow blouse and the navy suit, and even the helmet hair thing was going on.
Lego lady hair.
Yeah, exactly. So just leave that and just be Liz. And I noticed last week she did soften it a bit. She started looking a bit not like pound shop Margaret Thatcher. I'm sorry, I don't mean that to be horrible, but it probably sounds it. But a bit more like herself. And I think Matthew made a very interesting point that in the first debate, she came across as very stiff, very wooden, very unconfident. But in that second debate, by taking on Rishi the way she did, I thought that did her a lot of favours, and you did warm to her then, because I think she showed her strength there. And I think there is still, she's not the Iron Lady, but I think there's still there. But, I mean, Rishi, you compared him to a Butlins Redcoat, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's cheesy, isn't it?
It's great, yeah. I mean, it's a great comparison. To me, Alex, he reminds me more of a meerkat. He like pops up, hi, I'm Rishi, vote for me. And it's like that sort of thing. And I just wonder how fake that actually is. I mean, I get the impression there's something, he goes, behind the scenes and turns this little grouchy, well, I didn't like that. And it's like, as I said, and what is really annoying, and I'm sure everyone watching at the moment will find the same thing, is they're turning on each other like rats in a sack.
Oh, it's only going to get worse.
And this is the thing I think all of us are finding frightening. We just want now someone to steady the ship. And I don't think we're going to get that, Alex. And that is what is the most terrifying thing.
It is indeed. Dawn, thank you ever so much. Try not to creak there. You're with GB News on TV and radio. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the Capitol Hill riots as hearings into the events of January the 6th continue in America. But now it's time for a short break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Kangaroo court. Well, certainly the judge, jury and executioner in the public trial of Donald Trump as a Congress committee leads an inquiry into the events of the Capitol Hill riot are hardly fans of the ex-president. It's hard not to see the process as a Democrat-led roasting of the man they blame for inciting insurrection in scenes that saw protesters storm US government buildings on January the 6th, 2021. Certainly, the droves of turncoats witnesses ready to shop their ex-boss for casually observing the fallout following his claims the elections were stolen add weight to the credence that Trump was more than happy to see the mob march on Washington. Take, for instance, former White House Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Matthews, who said the former president's words encouraged the rioters.
As a spokesperson for him, I knew that I would be asked to defend that. And to me, his refusal to act and call off the mob that day and his refusal to condemn the violence was indefensible.
Well, yeah, maybe, but there seems something hypocritical in watching lawmakers from around America chastise the ugly scenes when they themselves govern states where looting and lawlessness seem to be conducted with impunity under the banner of movements like BLM. While the Democrats' pin-up Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez appeared recently to fake being handcuffed by police as she was led away from a protest over abortion rights. The whole of American politics seems to be becoming a tawdry exercise in performance arts, which is hardly a sign that America is about to heal itself anytime soon. Well, joining me now on the show is Republican strategist and former chair of the Nevada Republican Party, Amy Tarkanian. Amy, fantastic to have you on. What do you take? What's your take on this Congress inquiry? Is it a kangaroo court, or are we beginning to learn the truth about what really happened that day, and is Trump to blame?
Well, unfortunately, you're spot on everything in your opening, and it's unfortunate for America that we actually have a bipartisan committee it's not bipartisan. And the fact that we don't have cross-examination that's allowed, we're not going to get down to the very honest truth. Now, there may be some parts of what we're hearing, to be fact, but when you have witnesses that are also throwing in hearsay, what are you to believe? And the fact that Speaker Pelosi did not even allow the Republicans' choice to sit on this committee was also concerning. So you now have a number of Republicans and nonpartisans that are not taking this serious because it is one-sided. And it's literally, the whole intent is to demonize President Trump for his possible, rerun in 2024. And so now you've got a lot of political strategists that are very concerned that he's going to announce prior to the midterms, and they're hoping that he holds off so then that way the Republicans can actually take back the House. Because currently, in a Rasmussen poll, the congressional polling shows nationwide that we're up 10 points. So Republicans are actually supposed to do extremely well. But if President Trump announces his reelection prior because of this January 6th hearing, we might be in trouble.
Yeah, well, what is the point of this inquiry? What is it they're trying to do? I mean, is this to pave the way to potentially, in a very unprecedented move, put legal proceedings against the ex-president?
Yes, and everyone that also used to work very close to him. So today we're also going to be hearing the closing remarks on Steve Bannon's contempt of Congress. The whole thing is literally to demonize the Trump administration so badly to the point where Republicans and his base will turn their nose to a possible rerun. That's all this is, and it's political theater.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there's a risk of that happening, and will it dissuade Trump from coming back in 2024?
I don't think so. I think he seems to be pretty hell-bent on running. He keeps fundraising, and his numbers are off the charts. He still has an incredibly strong base. However, there's another poll, a Reuters Ipsos poll, that actually shows that 40% of Republicans actually believe that Trump is partly to blame for January 6th, when I think it was just in June, it was at 33%. So it has increased. I don't know a lot of Republicans that are actually paying close attention to this because it is so one-sided. And the two Republicans that the Democrats chose, they both voted for President Trump's impeachment. And so you've got Adam Kinzinger, who he knows he's not going to win his reelection, so he's not running again. And then you've got Liz Cheney, who's actually losing right now by more than 40 points. So, this whole thing has literally turned into a debacle. And I just don't see how this is going to end up well for the Democrats in the end, because I do believe President Trump is still going to run, and you still have a number of Republicans that do support him. And if it's not him, then it could very well be Governor, of Florida, Ron DeSantis. But either way, Democrats are struggling mightily because of the Biden administration's terrible policies.
Amy Tarkanian, spoken like a true Republican there, Republican strategist and the former chair of the Nevada Republican Party. Thanks for coming on the programme. Well, still with me, and she'll be here throughout the show, of course, is creaky Dawn Neeson, who's changed her stool. She's changed her stool, so she's not going to creak in the background now.
It was a stool.
It's interesting, isn't it? This whole Trump stuff, it's just typical American politics. And it just ramps itself up. It gets more and more cartoonish. They don't seem to be healing their divisions, but on some level, I must admit, I kind of want Trump to come back, because all this nonsense going on in the world, at least he slammed his little fists on the table and said, enough China, enough Iran, enough Putin.
It was always interesting, let's put it that way. It was never dull, was it, with Trump?
No.
With Biden, you're not even sure. I'm not even sure he's sure where he is at the moment.
He's not even sure if he's got cancer at the moment.
I know. And, obviously, if he is poorly, then we wish him well. But, can Trump come back? It's like, can Boris come back? I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, as Amy was saying just there, will this inquiry put Trump off trying to make a comeback? No, it won't. And, I think the most relevant question is the one you asked. What is it about? What is the end game? What do they want? Yeah. I mean, do they want him in jail throwing away the keys? Because that's not going to achieve this, is it? And it's like, but drilling down into the detail of what they're saying. I mean, the fact that he did not, when the riots were happening, he did not call security for 187 minutes.
Well, it took a while, didn't he, to come out and call his dogs off?
So you have to think, what was he doing? What was the thought process? And there is something a bit iffy about the whole thing. But, I think What we're saying now is America. It used to be the land of the free. It used to be, you could rely on America. If the world was going belly up, you could rely on America to help us out. And now you can't, Alex. And this is the thing. And it's like, we're sitting here doing this. What do you think Putin's doing in Russia?
Oh, he's loving it.
Well, if there's ever a way for a time for global domination, it's now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because America is in a state. And, as a woman, and I've spoken and written about this so much recently, the whole abortion rights thing, it just terrifies me as to where America is going for freedom, for its citizen, and certainly for women in particular. That horrific story, that 10-year-old girl, a rape victim, who had to cross the border, the state border, to get an abortion. This is America. This isn't Afghanistan. It's an utter basket case at the moment.
It is. Come on, America, pull your socks up, sort yourself out. Dawn, thank you as ever. You're with GB News on TV and DAB Radio. Coming up, amid unprecedented instability in Europe, the EU has decided to launch legal action against us over the Northern Ireland Protocol. We'll be discussing that next, but first it's time for a check on the news headlines.
It's 2:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The EU has launched a fresh legal action against the UK over claims it's failing to comply with the Northern Ireland Protocol. The UK is accused of being unwilling to engage in meaningful discussion to find a joint solution to the problem. The EU says it's challenging the British government, claiming it ignored repeated calls to reconsider its position on the trading agreements. A critical incident has been declared by the Port of Dover and it's urging holidaymakers to consider staying away. Police are controlling traffic with queues of up to 6 hours expected. The port's chief executive says staff are focusing on tackling the bottleneck but can't promise the chaos will be gone by tomorrow. It comes as a crash on the M20 has closed access to the Eurotunnel. Well, amid the travel chaos, a bit of welcome news for holidaygoers. The GMB union has confirmed hundreds of British Airways workers have voted to call off strike action at Heathrow Airport after accepting a pay offer. A former Irish soldier has been sentenced to 15 months in jail for being a member of the so-called Islamic State. Ex-Defence Forces member Lisa Smith was convicted of being part of the terrorist group by Dublin's non-jury specialist criminal court. The 40-year-old Islam convert was acquitted of a separate charge of financing terror. Ukraine's Deputy Defence Minister has met his troops training in the UK as part of British support for his country in its war against Russia. Volodymyr Gavrilov also met with UK Armed Forces Minister James Heappey to discuss further support to meet the needs of his armed forces. They spoke with trainees and Royal Navy instructors and watched them practising key skills at sea such as weapon drills and damage control. TV online and DAB Plus Radio. This is GB News. It's back to We Need to Talk About with Alex in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. So, the EU has launched 4 new legal procedures against us today for deigning to bin bits of the Northern Ireland Protocol that, frankly, make a mockery of any suggestion of goodwill on the side of Brussels. Like scrapping checks on products going from one side of the UK to the other side of the UK that stand zero chance of entering the EU's markets, and allowing Northern Ireland to have the same tax regimes as the rest of the UK. But Brussels has retaliated, threatening fines and punishments if the UK proceeds, using its own European courts of justice to litigate against us, which pretty much shows everything wrong with the protocol agreement and, frankly, why I think it needs to be scrapped. But how serious are these legal proceedings? Well, joining me now is Dr. Oliver Garner, who's a research fellow in European rule of law at the Bingham Centre. Oliver, fantastic to have you here. Now, explain to me, to the audience, what's going on, what's the EU up to, and should we be worried?
Well, thank you very much for having me. This is effectively the latest in a series of infringement actions we've seen from the European Commission that actually date back to 2020. So this was when, you might remember, the UK first proposed clauses that would deactivate the Northern Ireland Protocol in what was the Internal Market Bill. And of course, the legislation we see before Parliament now, the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, would create that power for ministers again. So today, the European Commission has decided it's the appropriate time to pursue infringement actions.
And, I mean, are these going to get anywhere? Because my understanding, having sat in the European Parliament, is the EU loves an infringement action. They churn them out at a rate of knots. And Britain has actually historically been the best country at being able to stand up against some of the ECJ's rulings.
Well, there's no doubt that this was the start of a process rather than the end of a process. We won't be having a great courtroom drama in Luxembourg tomorrow. What we have instead is the UK government now has a period of time in which it can issue a reasoned opinion in response to the European Commission's claims. And I think you're right to point out that a lot of the time these infringement actions, they serve a political function as well as a legal function. They're a means of almost playing quite a strong hand in negotiations with a member state in terms of trying to deter them from actions that could infringe EU law. So I would say we don't have a courtroom drama around the corner just yet.
Yeah, interesting. And I'd imagine it's to get the chorus jumping up and down talking about breaking international law. But our own Attorney General said that we have solid legal grounds in which to invoke Article 16. That breaks the whole protocol, basically, if we wish to, based upon it creating environmental, social and indeed economic prolonged problems. Do you agree with her?
I'm glad you asked this question because this has been a mainstream of work at my centre, the Bingham Centre for the Rule of Law. We've recently issued a report to Parliament in which we perhaps echo that argument and state that the UK government really should be triggering Article 16 rather than seeking to create legislation relying on an international law doctrine, which is called necessity, when there are threats to the state. Our argument is this is already there in the protocol in Article 16. The UK can make this claim. I think that there are grounds that can at least be argued that this is causing significant disruption, economical, societal, and environmental. And so our argument would be you should play by the rules of the game that you've helped to set up before going to a different source. So I would agree that it would be appropriate, at least for the United Kingdom, to consider triggering Article 16.
And briefly, what do you think the EU's response would be if we did that?
Well, if the UK were to do this, again, a bit like the infringements today, it's the start of a process rather than the end of a process. What this would start or set in motion, an Article 16 notification, is a period of consultation in the Joint Committee of the EU and the UK, which is quite technocratic. It sounds quite boring, but it basically means there'd be negotiations. And then there's a series of steps before the UK might be able to take measures. But there is an emergency clause if the difficulties are so immediate that the UK needs to act. So to answer your question, it would be basically negotiations again. So it would feel like we're back in 2017 to 2019.
I feel like we never left that year, to be honest. Oliver, thank you so much for coming in and explaining all of that. Really good to have your wise insight into this stuff.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Well, joining me now is former Brexit Party MEP Brian Monteith. Brian, there it is, legal experts saying that we do have the legal grounds to trigger Article 16 and, well, essentially hardball the EU and say enough is enough. Why on earth have we not done this?
Well, I think because the Conservative government was effectively split in the cabinet about what to do. We know for certain that while Lord Frost, when he was in charge, wanted to invoke Article 16 of the protocol, that people such as Rishi Sunak themselves wanted to avoid it for fear of a trade war. In truth, of course, there has been an underlying trade war ever since the protocol was introduced, because, of course, what the UK did was bring in grace periods so that some of the mechanisms of checking did not, in fact, happen. And this has caused great annoyance to the EU, who want to rank up the checks. And indeed, I suspect this is partly behind these legal actions they're taking, have instituted today.
Yeah, it seems to me that the EU's hope is to try and stymie Parliament from passing this bill by creating a humdrum, a cacophony of people going, oh, no, look, we're going to be in trouble with the EU's courts because we're breaking the law.
Well, indeed, I think there's more to it. I think this is actually a gift to Liz Truss because the EU Commission have called it wrong. I think they misunderstand British politics. That's no surprise because I think they're gaming here, hoping to influence people who have a vote in the Conservative Party by saying, oh, we must avoid a trade war at all costs. This is just the beginning. How can we stop? Oh, we must vote for Rishi Sunak. He'll smooth things out. He'll give in to the EU. That's what we need. When in fact, I think the Conservative members, and I think indeed the British public, would take the view, well, we need to actually play hardball with the EU. We need to either go through with the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill or indeed invoke Article 16. We need to actually make the UK what it is, a united country. And goods that travel from Great Britain to Northern Ireland need to be treated as in one country. Whereas at the moment, the EU is actually being easier on trade from Russia to Kaliningrad going through Lithuania. That's okay. Forget the sanctions. They're good guys. But British trade to Northern Ireland is from the bad guys. I think we can see through it all. It's all about trying to influence who will be the next Prime Minister.
Yeah, Brian, I think you're right. Always love having you on. Brilliant, strident comments there from Mr. Whippy, we used to call him, because he was the whip of the Brexit Party. There he is, Brian Monteith. Well, Dawn, I mean, I know you said, oh, don't ask me about the protocol, but the thing is, at the end of the day, you know, most people should be able to see that Northern Ireland, part of the UK, being treated appallingly. I mean, why is it that you've got these people who jump up and down going, international law, if you've got a rubbish bit of legislation that needs to be revoked, you can revoke it, you can change it.
The thing is, there are, as Brian so clearly, the only bit I do understand, Brian pointed out, it's like when you've got large chunks of the EU breaking rules left, right and centre, Germany and the sanctions against Russia with the gas and the oil supply, just completely ignored them. And they just make their own rules up as they go along. And yet, as Brian so eloquently pointed out, everything we do is wrong, OK, but they can get away with whatever they like to do. And that's what I think confuses most of us here as well. And the other thing is what Oliver was saying, which absolutely terrifies me, and I'm sure a lot of people watching, is this is the beginning, not the end. I feel like I've been using the B word since, well, 2016. Make it stop now. Can we please, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, we have to trigger Article 16, don't we? We have to make it end now. And the other thing that, trying to do a bit of research and sound vaguely intelligent on this one, the Brexit bill's gone up by 10 billion. I thought, oh my gosh, why is that?
Oh,
then?
I know why.
Yeah, and that's because we've agreed pension liabilities for EU officials.
Yeah.
Which we agreed to pay as part of the divorce bill.
Oh, we agreed to a lot of stuff, can I just say, in that deal that hasn't seen the light of day yet.
I want that pension. 10 billion.
I want that pension too, but I only did 6 months in the Parliament, so I don't get it. Dawn, thank you ever so much. Always great to have you on the programme. What are your thoughts on this? GBViews at gbnews.uk. Well, there's not a day that goes by without some salacious royal gossip at the moment, with the poor Queen wondering what she's done to deserve the constant onslaught in her platinum year. Tom Bower's tell-all book on the Sussexes is the gift that keeps on giving, with today's nugget revealing alleged comments by Camilla over whether Harry and Meghan's son Archie would have a ginger afro. Does that make her the royal racist sensationally mentioned in that ghastly Oprah interview? Then there's the big Beeb Bashir apology over the horrific fake allegations that William and Harry's nanny had an affair with their dad and had to have an abortion, all concocted to convince Diana to do her own tell-all back in 1995. It's no wonder the princes have an innate distrust of the press. All that on the day we're supposed to be giving lots of fawning over our future King George. There he is as he turns the grand old age of 9. We're joining me now on the show to unpick it all is royal commentator Jenny Bond. Jenny, fantastic to have you on. Let's start first of all with this BBC apology to the nanny over the Bashir lies to get Diana to do that interview. I mean, this is astonishing stuff.
Yes, it is. I mean, it was astonishing when the rumours first surfaced back in 1995. There was a Christmas party, a staff party at the palace, and it was rumoured then, I was the royal correspondent with the BBC, it was rumoured that Tiggy had left the party in tears, having been accused by Diana of having an abortion. At least Diana went up to her and said, sorry to hear about the baby. It was a very nasty rumour that apparently was started by Martin Bashir, allegedly started by him. Certainly the BBC are right to apologise all these years on. And I know from talking to Diana that it affected her very deeply. I was looking at my notes actually yesterday from 1996, a year after the Panorama interview. And Diana and I were having a chat together at Kensington Palace, just the two of us, as we did from time to time. And I asked her directly about those allegations about Tiggy, and she still believed it then. I wrote down in my notes, she still believes that Tiggy Legbook was the lover of Prince Charles and that there was an abortion. So the seed was planted very firmly in Diana's mind and made her extraordinarily, understandably bitter and desperately hurtful for Tiggy Legbook to have these allegations swilling around, well, for 25 years and more.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine how much damage that would do to Diana, to the princes, to Tiggy, if they're all completely untrue rumours. Well, let's turn our focus now to Tom Bower's book, because that's likely to cause hurt on both sides as well, isn't it? I mean, at the moment, it seems to me there are just bombs being thrown across the Atlantic between the Sussexes and the rest of the royals.
Yep. Oh, it goes on and on. You know, I've been doing this job for more than 30 years, and for more than 30 years there have been rumours, allegations, scandals, some of it true, some of it untrue. For a royal commentator, it's extremely hard to unpick the allegations and the fallacies from the truth. Tom Bower, I'm sure, is a man who researches his work absolutely thoroughly. We don't know his sources. I don't know if any of it's true. But 'twas ever thus with royal stories. You just have to take an informed view as to what might or might not be correct, and take cognizance, I think, of the fact that in this instance, the representatives for Camilla have been very, very forthright in saying this is absolute nonsense. So maybe it's nonsense, or perhaps Tom has a source that is absolutely reliable. We just don't know.
And this is not the end of it, is it? Because we're expecting Harry and Meghan to make some Netflix programme at home with the Sussexes or whatever it is, and then Harry's doing his own tell-all book. I mean, things are only going to get worse, aren't they?
Well, as I say, it's gone on for years, and it seems that it's going to continue for the foreseeable future. I don't know why Harry has written this book. There seems to be some obstacle to its publication, some delay anyway. What's in it? Well, it will be very interesting to find out, because this really is from the horse's mouth. I mean, the last time we'd had anything like this was Andrew Morton's book back in 1992, when everything came from Diana herself, albeit we didn't know that at the time. Now we know that what Harry has written in this book are his true beliefs. So just for once, we will know what is written, whether it is really what he thinks and not just someone sourcing it from elsewhere.
And finally, little Prince George, he turns 9 today. I mean, there's been so many distractions, but that lovely photo of him, the official photograph, taken by his mum, I believe.
Yeah, she's a very accomplished photographer, Catherine, and she's made it a habit now of issuing photographs. And I think it's so much nicer for the children, because I think George in particular, when you watch him out and about, he looks fantastically relaxed now. Beautiful picture, really happy, carefree young boy. But when you see him on the official engagements he's been on, or being besieged by photographers everywhere, he struck me as looking a little overwhelmed by it, as well any young boy might be, and a little shy about it. So this is absolutely the best way to get an official photograph out. And he looks a great young lad, very like his dad, I think. And all of them are moving to a new life in Windsor in the next few months, and enjoying, hopefully, the carefree existence and the real outdoor existence that all the children, all those royal children, love.
Jenny, thank you ever so much. Always great to have you on the programme. Jenny Bond there, who else? Dawn, I mean, you know, it strikes me that the whole Kardashian model is probably built on the model of our royal family. It's nothing quite like it.
It is keeping up with the Sussexes and the Royals and the Windsors, isn't it? It really is. It's the thing that the panorama one is the one I want to talk about more than the Tom Bowers book at the moment, because, you know, the Daily Mirror today have done a story on, you know, should there be criminal charges? And I actually think the more you read about the evidence that's given and what Tiggy has been through for 25 years, Alex, I think this should be taken further now, because, you know, I was lucky enough to meet Diana, interviewed her on a couple of occasions. I met the boys when they were very little. And I just think that Panorama interview that she was conned into doing, basically, the abortion, faking an abortion letter. It's the lowest of the low. I've worked in Fleet Street for 36 years. I mean, you know, Fleet Street isn't great. It's done bad things, but really? I mean, really?
Yeah.
And I just think that programme probably did change the course of history. It made Diana mistrust her security, for a start. And if she hadn't have done that, been in that situation, would she have ended up in that tunnel in Paris? We don't know. It's speculation. Of course, it's speculation. But and then sort of obviously, you know, watching the boys walk behind their mum's coffin. Yeah. If Diana was still around today, those boys would still be brothers. They would still be the best of friends. They wouldn't be in this situation now. So much has come from that one Panorama programme. I think to leave it now, I'm glad Tiggy has got a recompense for the pain she's been put through. I don't think any amount of money can make up for it, personally. But the questions need to be asked and answered still on this one.
I mean, it's horrific, isn't it? To make up claims that someone's having an affair, they've had an abortion, it damages everybody involved. It's fake news, and I agree with you. Frankly, it should be treated as something criminal. I mean, it sets a very dangerous precedent, doesn't it? And just to think, that little 9-year-old, that little scamp on the beach is going to be our king one day.
Well, it's quite incredible, isn't it?
We might not live to see it.
Well, I mean, I remember William when he was like that. I'm that old. And you know the thing with George, he looks lovely in that picture, and obviously you can tell his mum took it because he feels happy and comfortable. And then you go back to the poor little mite at Wimbledon the other week when he was trussed up in that suit, boiling weather, looking really uncomfortable. He's 9. He's got a future that is, all right, very privileged, but it's a lot on his shoulders. It's going to be tough. And let him be a kid for now.
Yeah, I agree. Dawn, thank you ever so much. Fantastic to have you on the programme. Well, that's all I've got time for today. Join me again for We Need to Talk About on GB News at the same time, 2 o'clock next week. I'm looking forward to having you there. Coming up next, it's The Briefing with Arlene. First, though, it's time for the weather forecast. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. Mixed fortunes for many parts of the UK today. Rather cloudy for most, but there will be some heavy rain and showers, even some thunderstorms out there. However, there will also be some drier and brighter weather. The best of the drier weather will be towards the north of Scotland, where an area of high pressure sits. Northern Ireland also seeing largely dry conditions. But elsewhere, an area of rain is moving north across the Midlands into northern England as well. That will be heavy at times. And to the south of that, some heavy showers break out for parts of Wales, the southwest and central England. And these will be slow-moving. Where they occur, they could cause some impacts because of their slow-moving nature, issues on the roads and so on, even some thunderstorms. Some brightness and mostly dry for the southeast, as well as for Northern Ireland, northern and northwest Scotland. Temperatures for most high teens, low 20s. Into the evening, any showers tend to continue to move slowly northeast into parts of central and southern Scotland, northern England, and eventually the east of England. Some clearer spells breaking out towards the west, and a cool night.